She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
All right, Joshua, this is how this is done. This is the conversation that people either love or they'll hate. They'll love because they want to embrace this lifestyle you have of minimalism. Others will turn on Disney show tunes so that they don't have to feel the conviction that you're going to give them when you tell them to get rid of their crap. So let's walk down the path. How did you start this lifestyle of minimalism?
Sure. Well, I hope they don't turn to Disney yet. I'm pretty kind and pretty nice
Right.
and pretty friendly, so I don't think they'll feel too convicted. How did I get started on my path to minimalism? My journey started on a Saturday morning where I woke up to clean out my garage, which is a pretty typical weekend in America, right?
Yeah, it's a dad project too, isn't it?
It is. And I hope that my 5-year-old son would play a part in cleaning the garage with me, which lasted about 20 seconds.
That's pretty long.
Yeah. He grabbed his summer toys. It'd been this winter in Vermont, and we're now coming on springtime, and so you just clean out your stuff, and that's what we tend to do on the weekends. My son goes in the backyard to play with his wiffle ball and wiffle ball bat, and he says, "Dad, will you come play catch with me?" And I said, "I can't because I'm cleaning out the garage. This is my job for the day." We've all been here, right? We've all been here. I start cleaning out the garage. One thing leads to another. Hours later, I'm still working on the same garage. My son's running up about every 10 or 15 minutes, asking me to come play catch with him. I just keep pushing him off. One more minute, I'm almost done. The first time I ever heard the word minimalism was from my neighbor. That day, my neighbor's doing all of her yard work. I'm cleaning the garage. I start complaining to her about all the time that had gone into my garage.
Right.
And she says, that's why my daughter is a minimalist. She keeps telling me I don't need to own all this stuff. And so I remember looking at the pile of dirty, dusty things in my driveway that I'd spent hours clearing out of my garage. And out of the corner of my eye, I see my 5-year-old son swinging alone on the swing set in the backyard where he'd been all morning long, and suddenly realized that not only were my things not making me happy, although most of us would say that, we're not looking for happiness in our possessions. Not only were my things not making me happy, but all the things I owned were actually taking me away from the very thing that did bring me happiness and joy and meaning and purpose in life. And I think that that's really the switch that had to flip in my brain and in my mind and how I see the world and how I see possessions. It's not that they don't bring us happiness, it's that the overaccumulation of them actually distracts us from real living and real happiness and real joy. So that's how it started for me. Thanks for letting me share the story, by the way, to get started.
Well, it's a beautiful picture you painted because we all been there. And also, and I'm looking at that Norman Rockwell picture of the Becker family or Dad Becker cleaning out the garage. You're fiddling with things you probably haven't even touched in years, but you still have them in the garage just in the event that you are ever going to be an NHL player or you're going to revitalize your NBA chances, because we do that with our crap, don't you think? We keep it thinking, I'm going to use this someday.
It is a very unintentional accumulation of possessions that we have. Certainly in America, most developed nations are still the same way, where I don't think any of us set out to just have as much junk as we possibly can, or just have as much stuff as we possibly can. Like, no one's greatest dream in life is to just have as much stuff as possible. Well, very few people. But it very unintentionally happens. Like, we get suckered into buying things that we don't need, and this mindset comes up that we got to hold on to everything that we don't need, and we keep all this stuff and it distracts us. You know, it steals our money and time and energy and focus.
Well, let's talk about that day in the garage. What were the first things you got rid of?
The very first thing that I cleared out was my car, the things in my car, because so the story goes, I had pulled my cars out of the garage. And
hey, congratulations, you could park them in the garage.
Yeah, well,
so many people have so much crap they can't even get their cars in the garage.
I think the stat is 25% of people with 2-car garages can't park even one car inside.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But I had pulled the cars out, and I had this conversation with my neighbor where I immediately started seeing my things differently, which, by the way, if anyone hasn't turned to Disney yet, I would hope that I would get to be...
You've hooked them.
That I would get to play my neighbor's role in your life.
Right.
Where you just start to see things a little bit differently. And so I pulled my car into the garage, and I started looking around my car, and there were all these things that didn't need to be in my vehicle. There's old maps, and there's old receipts and pens,
right,
and ketchup packets and Happy Meal toys and books, right, and empty water bottles, and just all these things that didn't need to be there. And so I grabbed a bag, and I just put everything in the bag that didn't need to be in my car, literally leaving just the insurance and registration, and that was about it. A pair of sunglasses, the old CDs I didn't listen to, and I took them all out, and I didn't even sort them. I just set them on the side of the garage. And the next morning, I remember getting in my car to drive somewhere, and it felt so nice in my car, less distractions. It was just I was able to focus on my day rather than the red ball rolling around in the back or the pile of pens jiggling in the door there. And it was a feeling of peace and freedom, literally, that not having the physical distractions around me allowed me to focus a little bit more on my day ahead. And so that was the first thing we did.
So the first thing was with the car, but then what about all that crap that was in your garage that you thought you were going to use or tend to someday?
Sure.
How do you start paring that down?
Sure. Well, the garage I got to much later, because the next thing we did was the living room. And it's actually very funny that you would ask that, because when I talk about minimalism, when I talk about owning less, when I talk about the benefits of owning less and how it improves our lives in very practical ways, one of the first questions that I get from people is, but how do I get rid of X, whatever it might be? And their mind always races to, what is the hardest thing that I would ever have to get rid of? But how do I get rid of my books? Or how do I get rid of my sentimental things? Or how do I go through the entire garage? How do I go through my yarn stash? And their mind rushes to the hardest things to get rid of. And what I recommend, the process that I always encourage people to do, is get rid of the easy stuff first. Get rid of the things that you know you don't need to keep. And then begin moving room by room through your home, because everything that you get rid of clears up a little bit of space, a little bit of freedom. It's a little less stress. It's one less form of visual clutter or visual distraction. And the less you own, and the more you begin to experience, hey, it's just easier to clean my home because there's less things in it. I've gotten rid of some decorations I didn't really like, and so everything that I have up, I love. It's easier to cook in the kitchen because there's less clutter around me. The more you see how owning less benefits your life, the easier it becomes to eventually tackle the sentimental things or go through the garage or the attic or the books or whatever it might be. And so that was a long answer to how do you eventually get rid of some of those hard items to think through. You become convinced that owning less is improving your life. And then when you get to that item, whatever it might be, and I'm happy to go through any specifics, but you you come up with a solution. You're like, okay, owning less is better in my living room, in my kitchen, in my bathroom, in my closet. Now, how am I going to get rid of some of the things in my garage? And let's just figure some of these things out. So that's more of a general thing. I'm happy to go through anything specific.
I understand. But do you think this was then a spiritual destination for you, or was it more of a practical one? Because you know what I'm saying? Is it something we have to really in our heart change, or is it something we're just going to go through the motions on the outer part of our lives?
I think that that's a good question. There is certainly there's certainly a moment where we need to see it. There are some people who live and they just know that they have too much stuff. Like I've got to declutter my home. I've been saying it for years. Like I just know that I need to go through this process. I wasn't necessarily thinking that when I was cleaning out the garage. I just was trying to organize it after the winter. But there was this change in how I viewed possessions and how much time and money I had wasted on them, and how my life is just more valuable than chasing and accumulating physical possessions. And so there was a moment, we call it a heart change or just a mind shift change, that started me on the process. And then it got practical. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the clothes that I don't wear. I'm going to get rid of the duplicate utensils in the kitchen. I'm going to get rid of the DVD collection that no one watches anymore. And the more I made those practical steps towards it, the more I saw the benefit of it in my life, which brought about more heart change and more desire to live this way going forward. I kind of compared a little bit to going on a diet, right? Like it's one thing to go on a diet and lose 10 pounds and not make any changes in how you eat going forward, and you just gain the 10 pounds again after you've lost it. And so some people declutter, but they don't make any mind shift heart changes, and things just collect again.
Yeah, right.
Or you can own less and you can see the benefit of it, and it can spur this heart change, and you can start to see how consumeristic our society is and how empty promises advertisers are offering us, and just really begin to see, hey, there are better things that I can do with my money and better things that I can do with my time than constantly chasing more and more things that don't really matter in the long run.
So are you telling me during the pandemic, when there was nothing else to do, you didn't buy those shoes from China that were very uncomfortable because they were so cute on your Instagram feed?
No, I did not.
I did, and took them to Goodwill as soon as I could get out of my house.
There you go.
So that's what, consumerism, obviously I think I'm helping the gross domestic product or whatever it is, helping the economy. But this device, I'm holding my phone, is what we all looked at during the throes of the pandemic when we weren't leaving, and we were all accumulating, we were all buying more things. I mean, you weren't, but the rest of us were. So are there ever times then that you think, you see that ad that runs on the side of your Facebook page and you think, I'm just going to look at that real quick. Oh yeah, I need 2 of those. Do you ever have those moments?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that there are times that I fall into the same traps. I think that there are far less.
They are traps. They are traps.
I
and our devices know so much about us. They know where we're vulnerable to those traps.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that they're far less than they used to be. I don't think I fall into it too much, but yeah, certainly, to live is to err, I think, unfortunately. Right. And I hope the longer I live, the less mistakes I make going forward.
Right.
Now,
okay, what
year
was it?
Now, let me mention one thing. There are other ways to spur the economy than buying shoes from China, of course.
I have to hang up. I'm sorry.
And it's a bit of a misconception that if I become minimalist, it means I stop spending money. I can still spend money. I just spend it on different things, whether it be experiences with my family or giving to charity or whatever. You know, the economy can still go. It's just buying less shoes from China.
Yeah, they're really crappy. Well, that's a whole nother conversation because they come in sizes like for Cabbage Patch Dolls.
Oh, that's funny.
The clothes, they were about that big. But I don't do that anymore. What year was this revelation for you?
So we are 13 years ago. About 12 and a half years ago.
Okay, so I'm just sitting here thinking about the Norman Rockwell picture of the Becker family then at the first Christmas, where you give each child a piece of paper and go, "Here, son,
A piece of
they're
paper.
words from Rudyard Kipling, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas." I mean, do you open gifts at your home at Christmas?
We give our kids 3 gifts for Christmas.
Right.
We give one thing they want, one thing they need, and one experience to share with the family.
That's great.
And it's worked pretty well for us. So the want
Mine
would
are
be,
grown, and it's worked.
Yeah, the want would be, toy or whatever. They're 19 and 15 now. So, but they started. We were 5 or 6, and and so there was. Sorry, I'm trying to do the math in my head on the ages, and that wasn't quite lining up. But
That's okay.
so
I'm really
one thing
bad
they
at
want, one thing they need, and then one experience to share with the family. Like kids are changing and growing, and so they need clothes or something. But if you buy clothes for your kids, it doesn't have to be a cheap T-shirt from Target. So my son has always loved football, and we lived up in New England, so he always loved Tom Brady. And so
Good.
one of the things we
Great.
would get would be like a Tom Brady jersey, which is a shirt that he wears to school, but it's a little extra special and a little extra
That's
nice.
awesome.
And then,
No, that's a great way to put that.
yeah.
I'm noticing even with my kids, because we did do the 3 gifts as they went through their growing up years, that my oldest child, who is almost 29 and has 2 kids, now, because people, see, this is the other thing. People assume then you need more crap when you have these kids. And my daughter's like, don't want any more crap. Don't give us any more toys. And so she's all about like gift certificates for the girl to come organize her cabinets, or the people to come, Molly Maid to come clean her house. And so, but that is her mentality because she's wired that way. I do, even though I raised my kids like this, I do have one that's a little bit of a pack rat, not pack rat, a little sentimental. So then where do you draw the line? Because people think that I'm crass because I'm like, get rid of it, because I'm not really sentimental. So what do you do? Do you hold on to those sentimental possessions, or where do you draw the line?
So it certainly looks different from person to person, and I tend to be a little bit more like you. And I do think that minimalism benefits anyone who pursues it, regardless of their personality.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
But I
Sure.
think that some personalities gravitate towards living with less a little bit easier. But regardless of your personality, you can always own too much. Like, some people like having a cluttered desk. Well, you can still have too much clutter on your desk. And some people are sentimental, and you can still have too many sentimental things. So for me, I'll just address both personalities. So for me, it's always been only the best mentality, even down to the one thing. Like, what is the one thing that most represents that relationship or that accomplishment or that experience? My grandfather died over Christmas this last year. And so when the relatives were at the home and deciding what to get, I was like, what is the one thing that represents his values, what I want to emulate about him in my life? Like, what is the one thing that represents that? And it was
That's good.
He was a pastor for years and years, all the way up till he died. And so it was a little, and he was a shepherd when he was younger. So it was a little shepherd with a sheep. And I'm like, I think this represents who he is. And so I took that, and now it's on display in my home, as opposed to boxes of things that go in the basement. When my grandmother died, it was a photo of her that just, I think, showed her beauty and love and just caring, very caring photo. And so
That's sweet.
So that's always been my mentality. Only the best. What's the one thing that most represents that? When it comes to people with like a little more sentimental personalities, I recommend, and I recommend this a lot in a lot of different ways, I say pick a physical boundary and then decide what to keep that fits within the boundary. So for kids with toys, this works great as well. But let's say you have 2 boxes full of sentimental things from your grandparents. I would challenge you to see if you can fit it into 1 box instead. And so lay out everything and just choose the things that can fit in 1 box. Because what that does is it tends to, we tend to discover pretty clearly what are the most important things that we want to hold on to. When there's no space constraint and you can keep everything, then you can keep everything. But if it was said, okay, just 1 box or just 10 things or just 5 things, then usually it doesn't take too long to pick out, oh, I got to keep this one and this one and this one and this one. And if I have these 4 or 5 things, then everything else can go. And so it helps us sort out most important from kind of important is the way I like to say it.
Okay, clothing. That is a beast that follows us.
Sounds like it.
I see. Yeah, right. I mean, if I've got the shoes from China, I've got so many other things. But you're in your Steve Jobs black V-neck shirt. I'm in my Steve Jobs gray V-neck shirt, so I'm not too far behind. But how do we start paring down the clothing? Because isn't part of our fatigue the fatigue of having to make decision fatigue on what to wear, what to do with all of our stuff?
Yeah. The whole decision fatigue in the morning, the idea that the more decisions you make in the day, the less wise they become by the end of the day. And so owning fewer clothes eliminates some of those decisions. Another thing that people don't typically think about is when you have a lot of clothes that you don't wear, for whatever reason, they don't fit anymore, they don't fit quite right, or whatever the reasons might be, you bought them on sale and never really liked them that much. Like, there is this, I think this mental weight every time we open the closet. And it's like, oh, I really should wear that shirt that I bought and I only wore once. Or, man, I really wish I could fit into those jeans again. Like, we hold on to all these clothes that we want to be able to wear, thinking that we're going to get into wearing them. And like, I can see some space for that. But if it's been years and you haven't fit in those jeans, then that's years of looking in your closet and feeling discontented and wishing that you were someone that you weren't. And I think just embracing the new stage of life that you're in, the new season of life that you're in, the new size, whatever it might be. So for clothes, I think it starts with just getting rid of the clothes that you don't need. Realizing that you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time is what the statistic says. And
wow.
just embrace that. Like, don't fight against it where I need to look different every single day or whatever it might be, and just say, okay, these are the clothes I like to wear. These are the clothes I feel best in. I live my best life when I'm wearing these clothes, which is why I keep wearing them over and over again. And there's a good chunk of clothes that you can get rid of. And then I always challenge people. There's this thing called Project 333, and people should Google it. Courtney Carver started it, and the whole idea is you take this 3-month experiment where you wear just 33 articles of clothing. And you're not burning all your old clothes, you're not giving them to Goodwill, but ideally you would box them all up and just put them away in a different closet or in the corner of your closet. And just for 3 months, so it's not the rest of your life, just 3 months, confine yourself to 33, 35 articles of clothing and just test it out and see what happens. Because most people begin to like the idea of having a thinner closet, of everything in their closet is something that they love. And then after the experiment, they typically bring back a few items, but never as many as they originally started with. So I think that's a great one. It's a tough one to start with. You know, you're just hearing this for the first time, you might be really flipping over to Disney. But I would say, just start with clearing out your closet of the things that don't fit, that you don't like anymore, that you never ended up wearing. And then as your closet gets a little bit thinner, yeah, maybe I will, test out this experiment and push myself a little bit further even.
Now, with your children, do you have one who's a girl?
Yep.
Okay. How did she feel on that challenge? Because that's something that you said she was a teenager. That teenage group is really influenced by what Instagram influencers are saying, what people are doing. They're, Kylie Jenner has 25 Lamborghinis and, 1,000 pairs of shoes and Chanel bags and all that. So how does she feel about what society tells her and what the small, still voice of Joshua Becker tells her?
She has not done the experiment, which is very interesting now that you mention it. I don't think I've ever asked her to do it. I wonder if she would do it if she could. She's 15 now, and certainly getting into more and more of that. So she would have been 2 years old when we started this process, and so she just turned 15, and so her entire life has been, this is what Dad talks about, and he makes a big fuss when things come in the house. And but my wife has always handled the kids' clothing more than I have, which is probably good. But it would be interesting. She's a gamer. I think she might be not like a video gamer, but she'd be in for a challenge.
She's up for it. Yeah, I can see that.
She might be interested in doing it. Maybe not in August and September when school is first starting, but maybe when she kind of gets used to her clothes a little bit more. But it's, you mentioned Kylie Jenner, and I get asked a lot, well, how do your kids? Are you depriving your kids? Like, how do your kids respond to this? And the reality is that there is always going to be kids that have more than your kids do. Like, whether you're pursuing a minimalist life or whether you're just spending every dollar you have on clothes for your kids, like, there are always going to be kids that have more clothes and have nicer cars and bigger houses and the newer phone and the newer technology. And you don't, the way I like to say it is you can't outspend envy. Like, if your child is envious of something that someone else has, you can't just buy that thing to solve that issue, because there's always going to be another thing. And so at some point, like, kids need to learn, hey, there's limited money that we have that you're going to have. There's limited space in your home that we have that you're going to have. There's limited time that you have in your life. And so learning to live within those boundaries and deciding what's the most important things to put inside those boundaries is actually, I think, one of the most important lessons that we can teach our kids. And kids who don't learn boundaries become adults who don't set them, and that becomes a whole range of issues.
Well, I know with our kids, because we've always had both a frugal mentality. My husband, it's just, you're either frugal or you're not. He's of the frugal variety. I'm not. But in raising our kids, it's fun to see them now as adults have the same mentality, because we always said, whatever it is, they'll say, well, I need this, I need this. We'd say, well, is it a want or a need? Because if it's a need, I'll provide your clothing. So our son, who's 26 now, always was losing his shoes. I mean, he's a big boy, and they were like a size 14. How you could admit they were small boats. But he was always losing his shoes, football cleats or whatever. And so we'd say, well, we'll buy the first pair, but everything else is on you. Same thing with the retainer. He lost so many retainers that the orthodontist said, you buy 5, you get the 6th one free, because my son had to buy them. So once you start instilling that, and that it's on them, and they've got skin in the game. We did that same with their college. We did it with just every philosophy. And now they thank us because they said, now we see the value of things. So they didn't get cars until they had jobs that took them someplace where I couldn't take them. Mm-hmm. And they were used cars. Mm-hmm. And they drove them until the wheels fell off. So that's part of that mentality of your daughter being raised from age 2 on. she's going to see the value of it, especially as she has peers who are overindulged. And that's when my kids really saw it, when they went to college and the roommate was on the phone going, Mom, send me $1,000. And my son said he was cringing going, I've never asked my parents for money. You know, I either made it myself or I didn't buy something.
Yeah.
Same thing with college, you know, so it's in her. I'm just telling you,
Yep.
Raise them up, train them up in the way they should go. When they're old, they won't depart from it.
Yep.
You know, God's word tells us that.
And it's easier, I think, in life to start with the frugal mindset and, you know, make a bunch of money and kind of fall into that other lifestyle. Like, that's a much easier way to live than to start living luxuriously and lavishly and wasteful as a kid and then somehow dial it back when you get older.
Right.
Like
That's right.
It's much more difficult to go that way. And I love your proverb there is right and total true
Right.
and
And
perfect.
truthfully, frugal people are always frugal. My husband could make as much money as whoever. You know, David Koch, well, he's passed away, whoever, the Kochs or the Bloombergs or you hate to say Trump because I don't mean to make it political. I'm just saying of the Vanderbilts.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the Vanderbilts. It wouldn't change him. He still has a budget, says we're only spending this much every month because that's a frugal mindset of people. And I've caught some of it. It's a little bit of it is contagious after 34 years of marriage. But I see the fruit of it. So.
Yeah.
And that goes along kind of a minimalist lifestyle.
It is far more enjoyable to live life with simple tastes within your means, under budget, than it is
totally.
to live a lavish life constantly in debt.
It'd be a terrible feeling.
I'm just pretty convinced of that. It looks flashy on the outside. It looks more fun on the outside from the outside to be spending all your money on everything and having your credit cards maxed and having, you know, all the latest, greatest everything. But in reality, I would far prefer to live simple under means. But that being said, you know, minimalism and frugality don't have to be the same thing. Like, there are some people who end up living a minimalist life because they're frugal, and so they just don't want to buy a lot of things. But one of the unforeseen benefits of minimalism that I noticed in my life is that when you own a smaller quantity of things, then you're able to own a higher quality of things. And so if I don't need 10 or 12 pairs of pants in my closet, I can have 2 or 3 that are a little bit nicer, they fit me just right. Same with belts or ties or kitchenware or furniture or like anything. If I'm buying fewer of them, then I can actually spend a little more money on the things that I do own. And some people can, you know, fall into that same trap, I guess you could say, of, you know, just because I become a minimalist doesn't necessarily mean I spend less money. I'm just buying really nice things.
But that you'll keep forever. So that's my husband's philosophy, is that the Rolex watch he has that he has cleaned every year and he, you know, puts it in his case every night. He's had it for 30 years. And where I've been through 15 watches, mine is vacuum cleaners. It's kind of a joke in our house. But I say they really don't have long shelf life. They really don't live a long time. And I said, there isn't a Mac Daddy of a vacuum. I'm sure there is. That German brand. I can't remember what it is. That I would need, you know, that would be the only one I'd get. Because my husband, he's the one that got me the really nice designer handbag a few years ago. And he said, all right, you're done. You don't need another one. And I just went, what? Are you talking to me? You know, because his philosophy is you have the nice Louis Vuitton bag. I have 2. You don't need any more. And so I like that. It's just hard to sometimes, you know, gulp and take it in. So that I probably need a therapist for some of these conversations that we're having. Okay, let's talk about the other stuff that we accumulate. Okay, so when you're a minimalist and you've got your black shirt there that you're wearing, and let's say you're going on the 2-week trip to Europe, Do you have enough clothes to make it through the 2-week trip, or do you have to stop halfway, Joshua Becker, and use a laundromat in Italy? I mean, how does that work then with minimalism with all your things?
A 2-week trip would require a trip to the laundromat.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're fine with that?
Yeah. We typically do laundry once a week. And so I have, about enough to get me through a week. Probably a little bit extra. But yeah, it works for me, and I don't mind it at all. We've been on a couple different road trips that were longer than 2 weeks, and we stopped at a laundromat along the way. How many trips have I been on that were 2 weeks long, or more than where I didn't have a laundry thing with me? I don't know. If we go on trips, we tend to stay at an Airbnb, and so they have a washer and dryer.
Yeah,
and
that's
we just,
true.
Wash our clothes when we're there. I can think of one trip where I had to go to a laundromat in San Francisco and wash our clothes because something didn't work out. Something didn't work out quite right. But
right, and it cost $1,000 if you had to
a lot of
use
quarters,
their laundromat.
just a whole lot of quarters.
You had to pay the government half that if you go to San Francisco to pay for it. Okay, so what was Joshua Becker in this world before he became a minimalist? Like, did you have a corporate job? Have you always been a speaker and a writer?
I was a pastor for 15 years before doing what I'm doing now. I've been
shepherd.
Yeah, there you go. Got that from my grandpa. Obviously, I've been I've been writing speaking full time for the last 8 years. But I was a pastor for 15 years. Before that, my dad was a banker. And so I went to college to go into banking. So my degree is in banking and finance. But then felt called into ministry just before I got my undergraduate degree. So I went and did that. So I have a undergraduate degree in banking and finance, and then a master's degree in theological studies, and then pastored for 15 years and loved it. Loved every minute of it, and didn't want to stop. But
well, don't you feel like you're still shepherding people because you're moving them toward change? That's what our pastors do as our shepherds.
Yeah, I like to think that
change.
I like to think that I'm playing a similar role or a different role. Obviously my faith is still very important to me, and I want to be doing not to get too overly religious, but I want to be doing what God wants me doing with my life, and I feel like I'm doing that now. So sure.
No, I'm a Christian. Preach.
Yeah,
that's God's plan for all of us is
Yep.
very unique, and he knows how many hairs are on our head. So, of course, he would want to know how much stuff we have. Okay, so then when you start looking at, we talked about the garage. I wrote down, it's the fact that we're going to get rid of the easy stuff first. We're going to go there. And then it's to the everyday living. It's the pots and pans. I'm a home cook, so I do prepare a lot of foods. I do entertain people. So I kind of battle, and I got rid of the wok. I just moved into my dream home 2 weeks ago. Got rid of the wok because I can use something else. So how do you start, like the kitchen? Where do you go? How do you start?
So the kitchen, I usually consider to be one of the most difficult spaces for people.
Okay,
I can give you the exact order of rooms that I think people should work through.
Okay.
Start with your car, and then tackle your living areas. By that I mean living room, dining room, a porch, perhaps, like living room, dining room, family room, den, those types of rooms. Then do your bedroom, then your bathroom, closet, kitchen. Then you can do your kids' stuff. Don't do your kids' stuff till you've done all your own stuff. Everyone wants to know how to get rid of their kids' things, and I always say it is entirely unfair for you to make your kids get rid of their things before you've gotten rid of yours.
That's right.
Kitchen, kids areas, and then home office, garage, attic, basement, those types of things. And the goal is, I think you're moving easiest to hardest, starting with the most lived in areas. So try to do your entire living room, your entire dining room, and then move on to the next harder spaces. It's not always that way for everybody, but typically that tends to be a pretty good order. And so when you get to the kitchen, there's an article in the New York Times that helped me so much when I went to clean out the kitchen that I continue to send everybody to it. Even when I wrote my book, The Minimalist Home, which is this room-by-room guide to declutter your home, I referenced the list in the New York Times article. Mark Bittman, he's a professional chef, and he writes this article called A No Frills Kitchen Still Cooks. And people should Google it. A No Frills Kitchen Still Cooks. And he, again, a professional chef, so he's not just some Joe Schmo writing some article. No. He's a chef.
And a well-respected writer and everything.
Yep. And he says, if you own these 33 items in your kitchen, you can prepare any meal that has almost ever been created. And so there's a lot of like multi-use, like you got to be good with a knife, and it's, you don't have the avocado slicer, like you got to slice your avocado by yourself. Right. But with these 33 items, you can prepare any meal. And so I found the article and I went to my kitchen and I pulled out 33 items, the 33 things, the stainless steel bowls and this type of knife and trying to think, this type of skillet and pan, whatever it was. And I set those 33 things aside, and then I looked at everything else that I had in my kitchen. And there was way more than those 33 things. And I said, okay, well, which of these things do I really want to keep? Do I really need to keep? Knowing in the back of my mind that a professional chef, that a cook could make any dish they wanted with just these 33 things over here. But I'd still kind of like this apple slicer, and so
I got it from the Pampered Chef. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So held on to a few of the things still from that leftover list, but knowing that they were extras and I didn't really need them. So that's how I did my kitchen, and honestly, I've never regretted it. I love cooking more now than I ever did before. My counters are clearer. I know what everything I have and where it is, and so trying to find the thing that I need isn't as cumbersome as it used to be. And literally, I did not like cooking that much until I went and I did that process, and now I love cooking. And honestly,
so
I think
what were some of the things? Like, is the rice cooker something that's frivolous, and the Instant Pot that everybody has?
Well, how many years of your life did you live without an Instapot?
Right, exactly. But everyone makes me feel like I need to have one.
And you were just fine.
Right.
Are there ways to make rice without a rice cooker? Yes, of course. So no, those things weren't on the list. I kept my rice cooker and I still use it, and I think it's worth the convenience of having the rice cooker. So I don't need it. Well, I can make rice in a pot, but I kept the rice cooker, and because we use it quite a bit. So,
and I honestly,
I don't have the list in front of me. So,
I'm Googling it, and I will put anything we talk about. I'll put all of your. Right. I'll have the link of obviously to your website, to your litany of books, to Project 33. Is it 333?
Yep.
And the New York Times article. All those things will be in the show notes for anybody listening.
It's a great article. It's a super helpful article just for me to change my thinking of what I needed to cook. It just changed my thinking of what I needed to cook.
And I've followed him for years. And in fact, I'm a student at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York right now, and he's one of our instructors, and just heard from him last week. So he is prolific in his information about foods and even the political side to food and how delicious foods.
Yeah. He was very gracious to let me reprint his list in my book, and so I'm very thankful that he was, willing to share that.
And here's a tip. I don't even think you need a slow cooker, because if you just have a good Dutch oven like your grandmother had, an iron skillet or a big vessel with a lid, you can slow cook it in your oven. It doesn't have all the condensation that comes on the top of a crock pot.
Yeah.
So I've really even made that minimalist, because people say, well, did you put it in your slow cooker? I go, well, your oven, if you put it on about 225, that's a slow cooker.
Yeah. I would, if that is too drastic of a step for someone, I would say just get rid of the duplicate items in your kitchen that you don't need. Like, how many spatulas do you have? And how many at most, how many do you need at a time? Or
that's hurtful.
Coffee mugs or knives or whatever.
Coffee mugs, get rid of.
Whatever it might be. Like, just start looking at, it's actually a great place to just start in the home. I love the room by room thing, but if you want an easier place to start, just start looking at duplicate items. Like, how many, I can get rid of half of my towels and still have towels to dry myself off. I can get rid of half of my spatulas and still have spatulas. And so there's no...
Yeah, spatulas are hard.
There's no big life change. I still have the things, I just have less of them. Linens and candles and decorations. And
aren't you the 2 towel per person guy?
I found an article when I first started minimizing that argued that you only need 2 towels per person in your home.
I'm with you.
One to be drying with and one to be in the laundry. And as I tell the story, it made so much sense to me. I'm like, well, that's tough to argue with. You're right. Like, especially in Phoenix, where it's so dry and your towel's dry before you're even done using it. You're right. I don't need more than 2 towels per person. And then I went to my closet, and a family of 4, there were like 24 towels with that closet and the guest closet. Right. And I'm like, I'm not quite ready to go down to 2 towels per person. That would just be 8 towels, but I certainly don't need 25 towels in my home. And there must be some middle ground that I can find that works. And so got rid of all the old ones and kept just all of our favorite towels, and has worked since. So I share that story a lot about that as a way to just change our thinking a little bit with the kitchen, where, okay, you only need these things to cook. And all this is extra. You can have some of the extra, but you can kind of change your mindset about, I have to keep that, I have to keep that, and I have to keep that. And same with towels or whatever it might be.
How long do you think it takes someone to go from your room by room of your, I wrote down about 9 different, maybe 9 or 10 different areas. If you start at the car and you finish with the attic or the basement.
So that will depend on a lot of different factors. How much you have when you start, how much you want to get rid of, even your physical capabilities, how much time you have to devote to this. I typically share what was our time frame, and I do it in 3 different segments, which I think are helpful for people. It took us 3 months to go through all of the lived-in areas of our home. So 3 months to go through kitchen, living room, dining room, bedroom, closet, bathrooms. So 3 months to do the spaces we lived in. It took us 9 months if you want to add in going through everything in the garage, going through everything in the basement, going through everything in the shed, because those are spaces that you don't live in. I mean, you drive in and out of your garage, but you don't spend time in there like you do your bedroom. So 3 months for the lived-in areas, 9 months if you want to count those really difficult spaces that you spend a little less time in and tend to have a lot more stuff that you need to go through, typically. And then we actually moved into a smaller home 3 years later. And when we moved into a smaller home, we were able to get rid of even more stuff that we didn't even realize that we could get rid of, because you just tend to fill the spaces that you have. So 3 months, 9 months, eventually 3 years. But I think most people can go through the lived-in areas in 3 or 4 months is what I recommend, and then start working on some of the other spaces.
Well, I was following the geography. You were in Vermont. You're now, or at one point in the Phoenix area.
Yeah.
That cross-country move then was a lot simpler when you pared it all down.
Yeah. And that's when we moved into a smaller house, when we moved from Vermont to Phoenix. I knew that my house was bigger than it needed to be once we had minimized our possessions. I think, a lot of people think they need a bigger house when in reality they just need less stuff. It's a pretty easy solution in a lot of scenarios. So when we made that move, we took a lot less stuff. It made it a lot easier. And we bought a smaller home than we had before, which saves tons of money and tons of
upkeep,
energy and time and maintenance. And
all the things.
Yeah. Actually, there's a really funny story because we moved from a bigger house to a smaller house in Phoenix, and we were getting ready to move in, and my wife wanted to change the carpets. She's like, I think we should replace the carpets. And we had looked into replacing the carpets in our house in Vermont, and I'm like, oh, that is like a huge expense. But we had bought such a smaller house in Phoenix that replacing the carpets actually wasn't all that expensive. Plus, not every room is carpeted in Phoenix. And so it was like, we have a smaller house. Replacing the carpets costs way less than it would have been in our huge 4-level house in Vermont. Let's do it. Let's make it something that we love even more.
So is your 19-year-old in college yet?
Just started last month. Yep, just started.
Oh, that's a hard time for a parent.
Yeah, it's.
But it was easy for him then to box up things because you only get to take like 2 boxes in a piece of luggage. You don't get to take much with you.
Yeah, not much. He moved into an apartment with a couple different friends, and so they kind of decided what each person was going to bring. But yeah, he didn't need to take much at all.
And boys especially need a few things. I remember when I took my son, someone said, are you taking a boy to college? Because I'd taken a girl first. And they said they just need 2 sets of sheets. They go one for the first semester and one for the second semester, which as a mother gives me a little throw up right here. But they're not going to wash as much as you think. And they might brush their teeth. The things that you tried to instill raising that kid. Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. And then you get to my point where we're empty nesters. And so everyone's asked, my husband and I, as we just built what was our dream home. My husband was an architect major. He actually got a degree in finance. But so he has always had the Frank Lloyd Wright, loves all the glass and steel. And they said, so are you downsizing? And I said, really, for us, we're right sizing. I said, we have less crap, but we have bigger living space because of our view and things like that. So there comes a time that just because you're getting up in years like I am, I don't have to live in a tiny little box. I can enjoy my thing. I'm justifying it to you just in case. No, I know I don't have to. But my point is, as you go through seasons of life, your seasons change into what you think because everyone's asked us, so are you downsizing? I go, well, I really don't want to tell you all my business, but you end up embracing the things. You want less. You definitely, I feel like that's universal. We want less or fewer things, and then to enjoy those fewer things with the family you have.
Yeah.
So.
My mother-in-law, when her kids moved out, they moved into a much smaller home. Actually, it was a townhome, and it was in like a community, so they didn't have to handle the yard work anymore, and they didn't have to fix anything because it was a part of where they were living. And she loves it. She's like, I love having a smaller place to take care of, and it costs less, and we get to do a little more traveling, and she gets to spend a little more time with lunches with friends, and but the whole seasons of life thing is it's a big factor in what we keep and what we need to have and what we need to own. And I have an online course that I take people through, and the mom with 6 kids, and she's homeschooling, and she's like, how do I get rid of all this kid stuff? I'm like, I mean, there's just a reality that if there's 8 people in your home and you're homeschooling, that you're going to have a lot more kid stuff than the empty nesters. And so you try to figure out, like, what do I need to have for this season of life? What's the excess that's keeping me from making the most of this season of life? And then as life changes, we're now down to 3 in our home, and in a couple of years we'll be down to 2. And so what that looks like will certainly change. Always takes some adjustment, but it's a big factor in deciding what to keep and what to get rid of. And I typically say this, but minimalism always looks different from one person to another. Like, the goal of minimalism isn't just to own the fewest amount of things as possible. The goal of minimalism is to own just what I need so I can make the most of my life. Like, minimalism is removing distractions that keep me from my greatest values and my greatest purposes and my greatest pursuits in life. And that changes from season to season. It changes based on your occupation. It changes based on where you live. If you live in the country, if you live in the city, if you're a teacher or an architect or a dentist or a writer, if you have 2 kids or 6 kids, all those things are going to factor into what you keep.
I think we've covered all the bases. You are so inspiring. All the information in the show notes. But the online course sounds fabulous, because that's something anyone can do anywhere. And I've been that homeschooling mom. There is a lot of crap you have with that too. So all the things. Joshua, thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.